D.C. is a city of monuments, all right, but it's also a place bristling with action. It's not all what you got and who do you know. It has people, real people, cavorting in diverse neighborhoods. It can be conservative and solemn one moment and eccentric and boisterous the next. And let's get this out of the way. It's a lot safer than some of you may have been led to believe.
For people to come here and feel uncomfortable, I can't understand that.
28 years and I stay out late, never been touched.
People in this city look at each other, they say hi to each other. This is a small city. It's a small, friendly city.
Join me, won't you, as we show you new ways to see familiar sights, and we'll take you to places even veteran Washingtonians don't know about.
The allure here, it tells the story of America.
Come, let's make friends as we take a trip around America's hometown.
I love my city.
Join me, won't you?
Dan DiNicola at home in D.C.
Look, even if you've been here before, natives and longtime denizens will tell you the best time to see monuments is at night.
I love Washington at night. I love the quiet time without the big crowds, and I like the lights. I think they're the most beautiful at night. I first came at night when I was in love with a gorgeous woman who's now my wife.
The Lincoln Memorial is majestic at night. I think of Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And there's Anthony Hopkins as Nixon with the war protesters.
It's a very fascinating memorial, a lot of different features to it.
By chance, I meet Daniel Zuchek from Albany. He's working on new, improved lighting for the memorial. He and his firm have been hired by Audrey Tepper from Schenectady.
And I've been working on the preservation of the Lincoln and Jefferson memorials for approximately the last 5 years.
You never know who you're going to meet in America's hometown. You're kind of a crusty conservative there, aren't you? John has pet peeves shared by many Washingtonians. The potholes never seem to get fixed, and the meter maids.
If you park illegally or you park 5 minutes over your time in your meter, you will get a ticket.
This meter maid told me the offending auto was 8 minutes over. Bottom line, folks, don't drive in D.C. And why should you? Folks, D.C. has one of the best metro systems in the nation. I think I'm going to Federal Square. How much is?
Federal Square?
Is it Federal? Yeah.
Federal Triangle? You put $1 in here.
And I got 10 cents?
Okay, add 10 cents.
Are you always this helpful to people?
Yep.
This woman had no idea she was on camera. And for all the talk about D.C. being an angry, hostile city, every time I travel here, I am impressed by the calm and easy friendliness between the races. More so than in any large city I've been to. People seem to be very friendly here, very accommodating.
Well, what else can you do?
Can I get a receipt?
Yeah.
Cabs in D.C. don't run on a meter, but in zones. So I go from zone 1 to zone 7?
Yes.
It costs me $11.75.
Exactly.
The most one person will pay is $12.50. This is what Ranjit, my cabbie, has to say to tourists.
When they come here, they don't have to know anything. They have to depend on the cab driver.
For honesty?
Yes.
Are you honest?
Yes, I'm very honest.
All right. If you run a frilly business account, you can stay at posh hotels like the Willard. Remember the Willard, where a familiar term originated with President Ulysses Grant?
He would come to the old Willard and sit in the lobby and enjoy a cigar and a brandy. People knew that they could probably find the president in the lobby, and they would come and ask him for jobs or other favors. If he got so disgusted with them, he called them lobbyists.
In Georgetown, we found Georgetown Suites. Look, not just a cubicle, but a living room, dining area, and kitchenette. Downstairs, complimentary breakfast each morning. It's clean, it's safe. In off-season, rates are as low as $69 a night and right in the heart of Georgetown.
Oh, when I grew up in Washington, it was a sleepy southern town.
Meet Gary Hyrick, grandson of legendary brewer Christian Hyrick and himself the brewer of popular Foggy Bottom beer.
We go back 3 generations. I've spent my entire life here.
Once a haven for tobacco merchants and absorbed by D.C. in 1791, Georgetown is Washington's oldest neighborhood. That was then, this is now. So what did you say about this place? Is the what?
Best kept secret in Washington.
We're at Tudor Place, right off Georgetown's main drag. It was owned by the granddaughter of Martha Washington. Here is Washington's letter to Martha explaining his decision to be a rebel. From this window in this sleepy southern town, girls at Tudor Place took off their petticoats to signal their cousins at Arlington. That was before the war. During the Civil War, this was a southern house, and it's brimming with stories.
Orton and Gipp. Orton was something of a blackguard, but he convinced his cousin, both of them Confederate soldiers, to go down to Tennessee, cross over Union lines. We don't know why, but they were captured wearing Union uniforms and carrying forged Union papers. And within 12 hours, there was a summary court-martial, and they were hanged as spies.
Orton and Gipp hanged by the Yankees. And in this bed, Robert E. Lee spent his last night in Washington. Just up the street, you can spend most of an afternoon strolling through Dumbarton Oaks, a palatial house and garden in what is regarded as the finest setting in Washington. FDR and Churchill met here to draft plans for the UN. A little-known fact is that the fortune that made all this opulence possible was Fletcher's Castoria, better known as castor oil. 16 acres in all, for everyone, from scholars to romantics. Georgetown at night. It's not a yuppified zoo.
It is. There's everything goes on here, you know? Like in the daytime, it's all the political, like everything in the world that happens, and in nighttime, it's a party scene.
It's Sunday at Clyde's. Carol Anderson is a bartender, and oh yes.
I teach school full-time, actually.
You teach school, like what, elementary school?
Yes.
Third grade teacher?
Kindergarten.
Carol says everybody comes to Georgetown.
Young people, older people, locals, tourists, you know, blue collar, blue blood, they're all here.
Right now, it's a Redskin place. And yes, folks, Washington's the only pro football team with an official song.
For all they say.
There you go. All from D.C.
An extraordinarily
Georgetown, midweek.
Very different sort of flavor for Georgetown and for the city.
Gary takes me to meet his friends at Hibiscus, right on the Potomac. Jimmy and Sharon Banks serve Nouveau Caribbean.
A Kaiser Sose.
You like the Kaiser Sose thing, yeah.
Jimmy invites me for a new drink named after a character in The Usual Suspects. And the usual appetizers, calamari, fritters, shark, and shrimp. Full moon, a walk along the Potomac where Georgetown was born. People looking to meet people. At Nathan's, Karen Downey dishes out dirt on D.C. power trips.
You have to go out and suck up to people to get money to run for office, and they screw up the whole system.
And at Music City, pool and beer. And Gary points out something not only about D.C., but about the rest of America as well.
Basically seeing a relatively conservative group. People aren't crazy the way they used to be.
In the middle of it all, one of the best jazz clubs in the country, Blues Alley. Tonight, Charlie Bird with Chuck Red on Vibes. Chuck, you're going to meet him later. In D.C., even the somber sights can yield incidental pleasures and discoveries.
You don't have to walk. There are shuttle buses, like I say, that takes you all over the cemetery, especially to the prominent site.
Ready! At Arlington National Cemetery, the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. That's Sergeant Heather Lynn Johnson, the first woman ever assigned to that duty. Tourists always pay respect to the Challenger victims and to the soldiers killed in the Iranian desert during the hostage crisis. They will always visit the JFK gravesite where JFK, Jacqueline, and their children are buried. Me, I go to Hills 7A. There's the grave of the great heavyweight champion, Joe Louis. And next to him, Look at that small, modest stone, PFC Lee Marvin. There's the grave of Jimmy Doolittle and legendary newscaster Frank Reynolds, captain of the Challenger Mike Smith, and here, Congressman Sam Stratton. Walk around Arlington and history unfolds. Atop the hill next to the Custis House, once owned by Robert E. Lee, the grave of Pierre L'Enfant, the architect of Washington, D.C. There's the grave of Johnny Clem, drummer of Chickamauga, and here, next to Lee's home, Yankee graves, ordered to be placed there by General Montgomery Meigs. There's probably a politer way of putting this, but these graves here exist as a way of sticking it to Robert E. Lee. Behind the house, a familiar name, Abner Doubleday, the man some say invented America's greatest game, baseball. And one more reminder of Montgomery Meigs, the guy with revenge in his heart. A sculpture of his son as he was found in the Shenandoah Valley. And then
What Montgomery Meigs did, he told his friend Phil Sheridan to burn a lot of the towns within 50 miles of where his son was found. And in retaliation for that, the Confederates burned Chambersburg, Pennsylvania.
Steve Foreman is the kind of guy who can make a graveyard come alive with touching stories.
This is a very unique grave style here. It's known as a table stone. A grieving family could come here, put their food and drink on the table and not on the ground.
And Steve reminds us there's one cemetery even natives don't know about. This is the first what?
National cemetery. Like we were in Arlington National Cemetery. This is the first national cemetery.
Atop Capitol Hill, this is the Congressional Cemetery.
So they were put in a public vault over there. Darley Madison was in there, William Henry Harrison was in there. It tells the story of America.
Elbridge Gerry, only signer of the Declaration of Independence to be buried in D.C. Remember Gerry?
Elbridge Gerry was the first politician to carve up a district politically. And he was from Massachusetts, and a paper in Boston showed what the new district looked like, and the new district looked like a salamander. And the paper said, no, it's not a salamander, it's a gerrymander.
Henry Clay and John Calhoun are here, and in one patch of grass, the stone of Clay's 2-month-old daughter.
This cemetery is the common person. It's not the soldier only. It's the writer. It's the doctor. It's the woman suffragette. It's the child.
Buried here, 35,000 children, a reminder of how precious life was in the early days. There are the stones of Native Americans like Pushmataha, who fought with Andy Jackson. The son of Cochise is here. John Philip Sousa, father of the American March. And others will be buried here too.
Hale Boggs' daughter, Cokie Roberts, and her husband, Steve Roberts.
Cokie Roberts?
Cokie Roberts.
He's going to be buried
right here. This is they bought this land right over here.
And yes, there are more stories. Here in this patch, from here right up to there, lies an interesting irony. One, I think, that some would call comical. Former FBI Chief J. Edgar Hoover is buried above, and below, the grave of a soldier Hoover might have investigated, gay Vietnam veteran Leonard Matlavich, a hero buried with full military honors. His epitaph, when I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men, and they discharged me for loving one. This national treasure costs taxpayers nothing. It's run on donations, and to its shame, Congress doesn't seem to care about a place which celebrates their heritage and ours too. There are no lobbyists for the Congressional Cemetery. And finally, a site which cannot fail to evoke deep emotion, even if you have never lost anyone in Vietnam. Each day, visitors check a map book and find a name, a buddy, a son, a father, a mother, or grandfather they never met. The Vietnam Memorial is, for many of us, the most profoundly sad place in D.C. One wonders whether future generations will feel the same emotions that we do. There used to be a time when you could go up to the White House and say, excuse me, I'd like to speak to President Lincoln, and there was a good chance that President Lincoln would come out to see you. Well, we've grown too big and sophisticated for that now, but you still can go and talk to your congressman. I think a lot of people don't realize that they can just kind of walk in here.
Sure. They can walk in here anytime, and if I'm here, I will see them.
I dropped in on Mike McNulty, congressman from New York's 21st District.
We can get them gallery passes. They can go over and watch the House and Senate conduct the business. And if they do want to go to the White House, we recommend that they contact us in advance so that we can get them tickets for that so that they don't have to stand in line for 2 hours.
You pay for your congressmen and staff. Be nice, but how can I put it? Take advantage.
How we doing? Good to see you.
We're on our way from McNulty's office in the Rayburn building to... So now where are we now?
You're right at the Capitol. Hey, John, how are you? Mike. Good to see you.
Say hello to the Capitol steps. Did you ever say to yourself, wait a minute, is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Am I here? Am I...
Yeah. And when that feeling wears off, that's when I'm going to retire.
There's majesty in D.C., American hometown majesty. From the federal-style homes in Georgetown to neoclassic museums and federal buildings. But for all its grandeur, everything is accessible. They planned it that way. If you want to see the Supreme Court in session, well, you can. Just line up, and if you're one of the first 50 people, you're in. Walk up these stairs and stand where justices delivered decisions which affected or changed our lives. Now this is something I ask you not to miss.
It's still the greatest library in the world, and I get to show it off now to many visitors.
A few years ago, Terry Sierra was in Schenectady, New York, working as a librarian. Today, she's in charge of tours at the Library of Congress. The murals, the mosaics, the sculptures, the ceiling from Florence. It all inspires awe and pride. And like most treasures in your hometown, it's free. If you're 18 and have a picture ID, you're welcome to sit and read at a desk in the greatest library in the world. You can hang out all day at Union Station, a neoclassic train station with entertainment inside. In all its Gothic splendor, the National Cathedral, non-denominational, it's the only church in the world with a moon rock embedded in a stained glass window. And there is the crypt of Woodrow Wilson. You all know the Smithsonian, but do you know the story behind the Smithsonian? The amazing and poignant fact is that the man responsible for one of the great American institutions never set foot in the United States. Enter the Smithsonian Castle, turn left, and there is the crypt of James Smithson, illegitimate son of the Duke of Northumberland. In 1829, he left $500,000, a lot of moolah back then, for the establishment of the Smithsonian Institution.
We really don't know why he did it, but from his gift grew the Smithsonian Institution, the largest museum research complex in the world.
Was it because, as an illegitimate son, he was an outcast in his native land? Smithson died in Genoa. Later, his remains were returned here. Before you visit one of the 11 Smithsonian museums, stop here and thank James Smithson. Everything at the Smithsonian is free. One of the finest and most overlooked museums is the National Portrait Gallery, where exhibitions feature wonderful stories as well, like this one about Louis Armstrong, and upstairs, portraits of the American presidents. At the Museum of American History, chunks of America's cultural past, from Archie Bunker's chair to gowns worn by the First Ladies. Mrs. Dolly Madison, Mrs. Taft, Mrs. Reagan, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you, Jackie Kennedy.
Don't run.
Here's John again with his daughter Isabella. She's my friend too.
I want to see animals.
Maybe you didn't know that the zoo is part of the Smithsonian. That means it's a first-class operation and it's free.
We saw elephant.
You saw elephants?
The end.
500 kinds of animals, 5,000 in all, and it's open every day but Christmas.
It's a kimono dragon.
You were supposed to call it a dragon instead of kimono.
Winter's the best time to come. The animals are all still here, the crowds are gone, and you can enjoy yourself. And maybe if you're here at 3 o'clock for the afternoon panda feeding, it's going to be just you and the panda enjoying the afternoon together.
I'm downtown with the chauffeurs in front of the Willard.
There's plenty of places that people don't even see in Washington, D.C., some of the areas, because they get afraid to go in those areas. And it's ridiculous.
So basically what you're saying is To the tourists, don't be so uptight. Go out and get around.
Go out and get around and see the city what it is, what it really is, instead of just coming to see all the monuments that we have.
The guys, I mean, everyone tells me that the hottest new area in town is one which in the past, tourists and many residents dared not travel in.
So I told Dan, you know, you have to cover Ben's Chili Bowl when you come to town.
Sweet. Thank you.
Well, it's a great place.
Whenever you want to know about real good joints, ask a jazz musician. Chuck Red, remember him from Blues Alley? This is Chuck, his wife Gail, and there's Charlie Jr. We're in Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street. Chuck, who's with the Smithsonian Jazz Orchestra, says he heard about it from Bill Cosby. Duke Ellington was born around the corner. During segregation, it was an all-black area, and after integration, it started to fall apart. Still, on U Street, they left Ben's alone. Now, amidst the burgeoning nightlife, Ben's Chili Bowl has turned into a national institution. 3 chili dogs, no heartburn, a record. Owner Virginia Ali is thrilled the area has turned around.
It's the nation's capital, and we've got such a diverse population here. So I suppose we'd have to get along. We're all stuck here together.
Now, pals like George Stephanopoulos come to U Street for nightlife. Some things like U Street change. Others stay the same. We're back in downtown atop the Washington Hotel, a great place to relax.
I come up here in the evenings mostly. Hang out with friends, eat some food, enjoy the view.
Tracy Kaufman cannot understand the mentality of fear she often hears from visitors.
Sure, because that's the press. Scaring them and not showing the beautiful, wonderful parts of the city. I tell them to get out and walk around and get a feel for the city, and you'll realize that it's not as scary as the press makes it out to be.
As is often the case, the only scary places in D.C. are those you wouldn't want to go to anyway. Still in downtown.
Well, this is the oldest saloon in Washington. It was founded in 1856, and throughout the years has been a landmark and a destination for tourists and locals alike.
Welcome to Old Ebbitt Grill.
Well, I shook President Clinton's hand in here just last year.
Old Ebbitt has the ambiance of old Washington. Teddy Roosevelt bagged these, and it's a haven for presidents. No, over there. Deals are cut here by politicians you'll recognize, yet it's something of a neighborhood joint as well. You want old Washington? This is it. Downtown within walking distance from many of the museums.
Today we're going to have a selection of tapas, which basically means the little dishes of Spain.
You want trendier downtown? The new rage is tapas.
This is the pan manchego, which is slices of toasted bread with a tomato spread and manchego cheese. Manchego cheese is a Spanish specialty.
Tapas at a place called Jaleo. A bunch of appetizers instead of one big meal. It's packed for lunch, and it's a great scene at night. Tapas at Jaleo in America's hometown.
It's a melting pot.
It is a melting pot.
Right. That's what it is.
Yep. Thanks, guys. D.C. is not a total architectural triumph. The FBI building resembles a fortress which might have been built by Albert Speer. And the Kennedy Center is really kind of a bland embarrassment. Better the brewery, which once stood here. But for just about every other site you visit in D.C., prepare to spend time. D.C. is not a fast food junction. Whiz in and out of sites and exhibitions, and you cheat yourself and your city. Now, one such place is the Holocaust Museum, where there is no admission fee. Haunting images, ominous headlines, reminders of how easy it is to happen again. If you've been there, you know what it's like to stand in the midst of pictures of an entire town wiped out by the Nazis. It's the little things that get to you, like the bags, the actual bags of victims. A visit to the Holocaust Museum takes almost 3 hours. It's best that you call ahead or write ahead for reservations.
Man trap.
If you go to Ford's Theater, you can almost touch the spot where Lincoln was shot. See the nick of the picture where John Wilkes Booth caught a spur as he leaped to the stage. And there are other stories as well. Look at the couch. Here, Henry Rathbone and his wife-to-be Clara from Albany, New York, were seated with Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln. Afterwards, Henry was never the same. Years later, Albany papers screamed headlines. Henry had killed Clara in Germany, and he spent the remainder of his life at a Hanover insane asylum.
I like it. I like it a lot, you know.
Don't expect to run into Newt Gingrich on DuPont Circle.
It's all about being who you are, and as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, this is the place to come.
DuPont Circle, named after a Civil War hero whose family had enough loot to erect a statue. Now it's, well...
You can be whatever you want to be, however you want to be. A lot of people come here from different parts of the Washington area to eat and just to, you know, socialize.
What defines the DuPont Circle ambiance or mentality?
I would say it's urban chic.
In this paradise for funk, the hangout is Kramer Books and Afterwards. Well, let's put it this way. It started with Kramer Books.
And shortly after that, a gentleman came down from New York and opened up Afterwards Cafe, sort of as an adjunct to the bookstore itself.
If you're a book maven, this place is for you.
I started coming here for late night breakfasts, and we'd go book browsing and then hang out and talk. I guess it's the hip area to hang out in.
Day or night, eat and read and eat, read, eat, and hang.
It opens your mind.
Just off DuPont Circle, a lot of browsing, a lot of embassies, and you'd be surprised what a knock on an embassy door will do. Let's say a little boy or girl is doing a report on Indonesia. I'll say, hey, if you do a great job, I'll tell you what, I'll show you around the Indonesian embassy. Do I have to let you know ahead of time, or can I just...
Oh, no, you just,
just walk in.
Just walk in and let...
Indonesians didn't need political favors to buy the famous Walsh Mansion for a song, 300 grand in the 50s. Once owned by the man who had the famous Hope Diamond, what is now the Indonesian embassy features a 3-story high entrance room. Saturdays in the gambling room, a show and musical concert. And yes, you're welcome. I'd like to come to a party here.
Sure, yeah. Welcome. Very welcome.
Down the street on Massachusetts Avenue, the Islamic Center. So long as you observe the rules of dress and respect for quiet during prayer, walk right into the mosque. It's a great place for kids and adults to visit and to ask questions about a religion and culture most of us know too little about. Finally, the gem of the DuPont Circle area. The Phillips Collection owns this breathtaking Renoir. It's all part of the 75th anniversary collection of Impressionists from all over the world. A wonderful exhibit and a fresh, vital place. Sundays, concerts in the early evening.
We're doing our best not to make it hidden anymore.
By the way, smack in the middle of the DuPont Circle area, a house where you can get a quaint tour and get some great tips as well. Christian Heinrich, the famous brewer, built this house in 1894. It's the Heinrich House. You can almost hear the string quartet regaling guests at the parties. Now, a gift from the Heinrich family, the Heinrich Mansion is home to the Historical Society. Kathy Smith or Barbara Franco would love to give you hints about the treasures in D.C. Looking for another place to stay? Here's the Kalorama in a part of town you're going to like.
If a couple with a child wanted to stay here,
Yeah.
how much would it cost?
Well, out in the front room with the child and with that view, maybe $65.
Aside from the room with a view, there's breakfast, afternoon sherry, and who stays here?
Everybody from a law student fresh out of law school looking for his first job to the Philadelphia String Quartet who rehearsed in one of our parlors.
The Kalorama is in the Adams-Morgan district, so named for 2 elementary schools named Adams and Morgan.
You're talking to somebody who's seen quite a bit of action in Adams-Morgan.
Shelley Broderick, John's wife, Isabella's mom, dean of the D.C. Law School. Shelley will tell you that the place to hang is not Georgetown, but Adams-Morgan, where the operative word is ethnic diversity, good restaurants, and funky fun.
Sit down. Totally diverse. There are 9,000 Ethiopian restaurants, Latino restaurants, French restaurants, Italian restaurants.
We're at La Fourchette with Pierre, Shelley's friend, and Pierre is the former chef for the Washington Post czarist Katharine Graham. Now, Pierre bought his restaurant at a Halloween party 15 years ago. Well, there's Benny right there.
Ah, there's Benny. Oh, excellent.
You're going to meet a lot of characters in this quirky Adams Morgan section, like Benny, who owns Le Café Riche.
No menu.
No menu.
We cook just as we make love, spontaneously.
Lucia de Lammermoor.
Walk into this bohemian junction, swoon to the strains of opera or 20s vintage jazz, and you're just as likely to meet a tourist as you are a city council president. Only one thing you must not be, says Benny, and that is boring.
I think people have always known about Adams Morgan.
The politically incorrect truth, folks, is that you learn about where to go, what to do, and what to watch out for from bartenders.
I'm a political cartoonist. Believe it or not, I am. It's true. Well, that's a good one there.
And a darn good one, too. Come in any night to talk, and you'll meet Scott.
It's got its own beat, surely. You walk down the street, and you can just feel it.
Well, in London you have 8 million people. Here you have 800,000, give or take.
And it's always good to get a perspective from a Brit who reminds us that D.C. is a small town.
As an outsider, DC is a great place to be. People are really, really friendly. They really welcome you.
And on our last Adams Morgan stop, South African music at the Bukom Cafe. Adams Morgan on a slow Tuesday night. Say what you want about scandals and bureaucratic bungling. All these complaints shrink once you begin to spend some time here. Politicians come and go, but the legacy remains. D.C. is a melting pot, a great and imposing city. Yet, it's a town. Your town. I hope you seize what it has to offer. I'm DiNicola.